Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Glory Boy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Quinn, and joining me today is United fan Reece, who's pretty prominent on Twitter, and people will have seen him on YouTube as well. How's it going, Reece?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and I am very good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad considering the result yesterday. Perhaps it was the worst performance of the season so far, and there's been a few. What was your immediate thoughts on the game, Reece?
I looked at that game and I thought we weren't going to get any control. I thought Leicester had full control of the game, and when we tried to get into it, we just didn't have the energy or the commitment. Whereas I felt they did for the whole 90 minutes. I think for about 5 minutes in spells, we were actually considerably good. But overall, I think Leicester just had everything that we should have brought to the game, which painful to watch really, because obviously you never want to see your team get outmanned, outplayed, but we did.
Yeah, one of the worst individual displays on the day would have been Harry Maguire. He was at least partly at fault for all of the goals, I would say. What do you make of all these decisions to play him after just one training session?
I personally think it wasn't the right decision. He isn't fully fit, and like just to rush him back in. What if he'd got injured? We would have lost him again for another period of time. I think it was bold and I think it was reckless. And necessarily, it's good to have a manager make a bold and reckless decision, but in this circumstance, I don't want him being bold and reckless. I want him to be smart, especially because it's the start of a barren run of games. You wanted to start off with a win. Obviously, in this circumstance, we didn't. And Maguire, like after the first 15 minutes, he looked flat and he looked out of it and off the pace. And I think even though he barely gets a run of games in the team, I think Eric Bailly should have started yesterday. Personally,
Yeah, I think so too. He'll be really, really disappointed that he didn't get a start yesterday, considering Maguire's been out for 3 weeks and Varane's now going to be missing for a while. He'd have seen that as a real opportunity to get a start, and Ollie again didn't show any faith in him.
yeah. And on the grounds of that, I don't know what he's thinking in his mind. What can I do to get in the side? It seems to be a recurring theme for certain Man United players because of like either it's favouritism or they're just overlooked or they're not perceived as good enough. Well, you can't be perceived as good enough, not good enough if you don't get the chance to prove yourself. I know everybody has a reckless nature in himself where he likes to do too much and he gets stuck in a little bit hot headed, but he still gives his 100% for the team, even if he unfortunately at times he gets himself injured being reckless. You see that he's commitment, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he is a good defender. He's just probably not the most reliable, but when he's played against Leicester, particularly Jamie Vardy before, he's always delivered. I think yesterday was the right game for him to at least come in and showcase. And obviously, you've mentioned players like injured, and obviously like Varane, he's out, like our Rolls Royce centre back. It would have been great to have an opportunity to stake a claim for Maguire in at a later stage, but Bailly would have been more sense. You could have played Bailly against, you could have played Maguire against Atalanta. At least he would have a couple more training sessions behind his belt, but he's only had one now. He's been rushed back in, and I'm like, you're surely you're the captain of Man United. I know you want to play, but you're the club captain. If you're not fully fit, you've got a voice. I do recommend at times using it.
Yeah, absolutely. Another major issue yesterday was the midfield again. No matter if it's McFred playing in midfield or yesterday it was Matic and Pogba. Um, the opposition just seems to be able to counter attack us at will and just cut through us. And there's many, many examples of that yesterday. Obviously, Pogba seems to be back to his lazy, arrogant self, not doing much work off the ball. He started off the season doing more of the dirty work. I like seeing that, but he's going back to type again. And Matic, as we know, is long past his best. So there was a major issues in there yesterday again.
Yeah, I honestly haven't got any idea what to say really about the midfield. It seems to be our Achilles heel, and it's been a long issue for many years. It was even a recurring issue under Sir Alex Ferguson. Like even like he was barely backed in the transfer market to at least get a solid midfielder. He had to resort to who he already had. At least he made ends meet with what he had, like Carrick, Scholes. Before obviously Scholes retired for the second time. He had Anderson and Hargreaves at times where at least he was making do, and he won a league with Cleverly, but that was then. Like that was like 8 years ago. That's not going to work now. We need players who are actually going to do the dirty work, but still be effective in the midfield. And all credit to Pogba. I love to watch him play. He's absolutely brilliant on the ball. He's a technical masterclass when on his day, and he helps pick a ball out, which helps us. But end of the line yesterday, he got overrun. He got bullied, which isn't something you would normally say about Pogba because he is physically strong. But yesterday he didn't look at all committed, and it sucks to see that from any Manchester United player. Really, doesn't matter who you are. You want to see commitment. You want to see them play to their absolute strengths. And yesterday he didn't play to any of his.
Well, Gary Neville has made the point again last night that we look so imbalanced. He thinks that Fernandes, Pogba, Sancho, Greenwood, and Ronaldo can't all play in the same team. He goes back to 2008-9, where United had the likes of Tisson Park, Hargreaves, and Fletcher backing up the star players, doing the dirty work. Do you think there's too many Galacticos in the United team, and we should have more players that are going to do the dirty work?
I think there is some grunt type player missing in that position, especially for the midfield where we need the control. I don't think we have one. I think an evident type of player that we're lacking is like a Roy Keane type, or we're lacking a Michael Carrick, someone in that midfield. We just don't necessarily have it. And I know fans are bigging up Scott McTominay, and obviously me being Scottish, I mean, like I want to see him do well, but in all respect, at times you don't see him doing enough. And now he's playing the forward passes. That's great. That's not enough. And when he plays for my country, he doesn't play in the midfield. He plays as a right-sided centre-back, so he's doing different jobs for different roles. And I think if he is to really showcase his talent, he's got to play in one position consistently, both for country and for club. And I do think we necessarily miss a type of player who just sits in there, does the work, works well with the so-called Galacticos, big-name players, and then under the radar but works hard. I think we do lack something like that. He isn't just the one of them. There's others, and I know Fred gets a lot of stick because he makes the odd mistake, and I know that happens, but Fred gives 100% every game, even if he is making a mistake. And I think a lot of people overlook that because he's not the best technical player, and that's true. But I think if he had proper coaching around him, I think he would be a better player than what he is because he's capable of the job. And that's what I think we are lacking, something like that. It's not always McFred that's the problem. It's the coaching on the position, it's coaching on what they're asked to do, and I don't think it's rocket science that it's not being coached effectively than it could be.
Yeah, I think McTominay is kind of a utility player. He's become like the Phil Neville or the John O'Shea of this team. But he isn't a holding midfield player. He's more like a box to box player for me. We need a more of a holder in there. Matic is the only real player of that type that we currently have, but we need someone younger than that, obviously. Who would be your ideal target then in that position?
I know many fans scour the globe, or they scour the Premier League, and the obvious name comes to mind is Declan Rice for many, and I get that because he is that type of player. For me personally, I would look into Europe ahead of a player in the Premier League, but I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to say a Declan Rice coming in. It's just the expense of having to pay close to 100 million on a position where you could still get a player for about 40 or 50 and still do the job. So I would look into Europe, maybe like the likes of a Brozovic, for example, from Inter Milan he does the job really well, or Zakaria from Mönchengladbach and Neuhaus as well from the same club, like a Weigl, like these sort of players, like they know what they're doing. But I think if you really want to get things going now, as much as it'd be great to sign a player out in Europe, I think we really need to get someone from inside the Premier League, but someone who actually knows what they're doing and is aware that yes, we play as a two behind the front four, or if we want to play as a holder. I don't know about you, but ever since Declan Rice has got into the West Ham team, I've never seen him play as a lone player. I've always seen him play as in a two. I don't know physically if he is actually capable of playing as a lone player. I don't know if he is, unless we saw it put in action. But I do think we need something like that, or even just someone who can just sit in front but can get get the ball rolling, like a Jorginho type player makes sense for Man United. Like Carrick is what Jorginho is now, except Jorginho's just got a bit more grunt to his game because he's having to play in a more aggressive system. I think we need something more or less on the lines of that. Someone who can just screen a pass but do a defensive job.
Yeah, someone that comes to mind straight away would be a Frankie de Jong. Do you think that would be a
Yeah,
possibility given Barcelona's financial woes?
I think that would be an outstanding addition to the club. I think it makes more sense for us than anybody else, or even I know he's slightly older, but he still plays in a similar position. I think like a Mirlian Pjanic would make a lot of sense. I know he's hitting 30. For some fans, why would you choose a 30-year-old over De Jong? I don't particularly mind who it is that comes in. It's a similar position. It makes a lot of sense. But I think either of those would be great because we know what they can do. They can put a defensive shift in because they've played in teams where they've had to defend, even though they're predominantly attacking. At least they can start attacks really well, and I think that would work equally as much. I think it would be okay.
Yeah, of course, we're never going to turn down the possibility of signing Ronaldo, but really we were stacked in forward positions and in attacking midfield. What we really needed was either a right back uh, or a defensive midfielder. We didn't get either of those. Now we've got too many forward players, and we're just stacked in that position. And Ollie's got more problems now than he needed, trying to fit all these players in and give them game time. And the clear weakness in the side was not addressed.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't, and I'm looking at it now, and we were all saying, "Oh, we only need X, Y, and Z," and then that's us. We're ready to go, and now we're looking at it, and we need to go back to ABC. It's it's like we've went from going to finishing this whole process project to then go and win the league, which you want to get everything right and then win something. But now it's at the point where are we actually going backwards? And I think that's what makes it worse. Is when that question creeps into your mind as a fan is we can see what we need. We needed someone in that midfield and we needed someone on the right hand side for both right back and even for a right winger. We needed that because it's been an issue for so many years. And now we're thinking, actually, what else is it we need to do? Because we can't just have we just cannot keep saying the same things over and over. Of we need another player, we need X, Y, Z. It's getting to the point where you really don't know what can be done to actually fix these issues. Because eventually you look at our rivals and they seem to be getting it right every year. And it sucks to see the likes of Liverpool or Man City win the league because they're getting it right both above board and on the field. If we can't get it right, we could end up stagnating further than what we would ever hope to never get close to. We would never ever hope to stagnate, and it looks like we're going to because we just cannot get it right, and it's painful to watch.
But the obvious difference between us and Chelsea, Liverpool City is they've got world class coaches in charge. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we do. That's my personal opinion. Do you
Yeah,
think? Do you think Ollie has taken this side as far as he can take it?
I've always been on the side of I would like to see whoever's in charge do well and succeed, and then if they don't, then it would be better for them to move on. I've never really, you see it on Twitter and you see it on YouTube and all that yourself being a podcaster, like it's always Ollie in, Ollie out, and I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of the debate. I've never chosen a side, and I'm sick of it. But I think he deserves credit where credit's due in terms of rebuilding the squad. He's got the academy going for giving us players for years to come, as well as bringing in key signings just to keep us strengthening when we're strong, keep us going. But I think he has got us to the point where we're at that stage where I think he is out of his depth. Personally, as a United legend that he is, like I love and respect him, but I think he's at the point where he's got us as far as he can go. I think we need somebody to come in who can just take us to that next level, who can then win the league and take us forward to the major trophies again. I think it'd be great to see him potentially win something and then leave. After all the work he's done, if he goes out trophyless, I think that would be for any fan that actually appreciates the work. I think it would be horrible for him because at least he's actually done the work and he's put the effort in. But I think it's at a point now where I don't think he's going to realistically win anything. I don't think he is. I think he's reached that ceiling of, okay, I've got us in a good position now. Maybe it is better that I hand the reins over. I would rather see him resign than get sacked. I think if he were to get sacked, I think that would be absolutely horrible. But sadly, it's not just football; it's a results business. If you don't get the results, if you don't succeed, you're not going to keep your job.
Yeah, I think his big chance to win something was obviously the Europa League final, and that was a disaster that night. So his moment may have passed. We've seen Chelsea sack Frank Lampard, bring in
Mm-hmm.
Tuchel, and they got success almost immediately, winning the European Cup. Is that the road we need to go down? Do you think we need to look at someone like Antonio Conte? We know that he wins titles. People have said he will have to change the style of play, but I don't think we have a style of play. There is no identity to this team. So at least Conte will bring one.
I think if we are going to go down that route of replacing a manager, then you have to go and get someone who will definitely take the club forward to the next step. I think if we do get Conte, then so be it. I don't necessarily agree with him being a choice. However, considering what he's done in the game, I think it would at least be a sense of he is no nonsense. The players who think they can get away with potentially being lazy or not giving 100% extent, and that's not aimed at like the likes of like the players that get the usual suspects of laziness. This is like to the whole team where you don't see them playing as a team at the moment. They're just playing for themselves. I think if we were to see that come in, it would be no nonsense. It would be straight to the point. I'm more of a sense I would rather get somebody who plays good football, can win things, but also gives young players a chance, like because that's what a club ethos is about. I respect Conte for what he's done, but I would look around and I would consider maybe a Luis Enrique. I would look at if we were to get him from the Spanish job. I think that makes a lot of sense because it's a similar system. He's aggressive, but he knows how to win things as well, and he gives young players an opportunity. I think Ten Hag makes a lot of sense from Ajax. It's a similar ethos for us. Maybe a Hansi Flick if we got him from the German job, although that's going to be difficult. It just depends on what you look for. Conte would definitely guarantee us trophies. It's how long would he actually stay in the job? And another thing as well is like from any Man United fans' perspective is we always talk about wanting to win the European Cups and we want to go back to that promised land of winning our fourth and then move on and get our fifth. Conte and Ole, like in terms of European records, are almost identical. Like it's not great at all. I think if you want to win the big trophies in Europe as well, yeah, Conte wins us like an FA Cup, he wins us a Premier League, but does he win us a European Cup? In all honesty, no, I don't think he does because he's never really done anything in Europe. It's a worry. But if we got someone else, I'd be happy with that. But if he came in and got us a job, just like Ollie on a simple fact of straight down the middle, where I'm not in or I'm not out, I'll back him until he's gone. It's the same with whoever comes in, I'll be the exact same down the line. And at least we will see. I agree with you about identity. I don't know if we have one. I think we rely on certain players, but I think it's not necessarily a crime for people who moan about individual brilliance because there's always going to be a team that has to rely on at times a player to come up with the goods if the team as a whole isn't actually producing. But we rely too much on that counter attack. And in all honesty, I want us to dominate teams. I want us to win. I want us to press. And I don't necessarily see it enough to suggest that we're actually pressing anyone. I think we're just waiting for an opportunity where the players that we're up against, they've given us enough space. We've got the ball now. Let's just get at them within 8 seconds and then we score. I want us to be able to just control games from back to front, press from the front, dominate games. And another thing as well is I want to see it actually coached in games where if nothing's going right, we respond like that. I don't necessarily think we respond in that way unless we go a goal down and then second half we bounce into the best attacking machine that you could possibly see. I want to see that for 90 minutes personally.
Yeah, we look like a team of individuals who are just sent out and told just to go make it happen. Yesterday was another prime example of that. Luis Enrique, yes, that's a very, very good option. But the question is, would he leave Spain in the build up to a World Cup? I very much doubt that.
Unlikely, yeah.
The Ajax manager, like you mentioned there, would be an interesting experiment. I wouldn't be against that. Another one who's been mentioned and been mentioned on this podcast is Graham Potter. He has a clear, identity and style of play and a system that he always uses. Is that too much of a risk, though?
I'm not entirely sure. I'll be honest. I've only watched Brighton a handful of times. Obviously, like I think he has a good manager, and I think he's got a very good style of play as a coach, and he seems to do well. I just don't think he would get the Man United job. I think he would be a club in a different way. I think he would be like. I think he's going to be I think he's going to be a similar to manager Ralph Hasenhüttl, where good manager, good style of play, knows how to get his teams going, but they're not going to get a top six job. I think Graham Potter, the best he's going to get at the moment, because they're not necessarily in the top six, but they're building, is maybe a Spurs, which I think is more his level. I think that makes more sense than United. I don't think he's going to get the job. I think for some managers, you need the personality as well as the tacticalness and the ability to win. You need to be able to handle this job because with Man United, it's people say the England job and the Real Madrid jobs are hard, but I think Man United is the hardest job in football because we've got so much to do. We've got to just like Real Madrid, you've got to play exciting football. You got to win trophies. You've got responsibility of the PR. It's not easy, and I think also dealing with such toxicity from everywhere because you're going to have the media coming at you for anything. The fans, if they're not kept on side, like it's not easy. And some managers can do it, and some can't. And you see some managers test their limits. Where you had Louis van Gaal, who's one of the most experienced managers in football. The job became too much for him. He won the FA Cup and he was gone. Mourinho, one of the best ever. The job got too much, and you saw him moaning about X, Y, Z about defenders or not getting what he wants. And then it got to the point where Liverpool battered us. And after that, he was gone. I think it's getting to the point where you need somebody who can do all three of those and deliver. And in all respect to Potter, I think he's a good manager. He'd be the first English manager anyway since Ron Atkinson to get the job. So we can see what he can do. But do I think he's going to get the job personally? No.
No, I think he would have to go to a club like a Tottenham or Newcastle and do well there before United would consider him. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think realistically, given who's in work and who's out of work at the moment, Conte is the most viable option. Zidane, I don't think that's going to happen because his agent made it known a couple of years ago that he's not really interested in managing in England and he doesn't speak the language or anything. So it doesn't seem realistic, that one to me. Um, so I want to ask you about Paul Pogba's interview yesterday. There's been a lot of chat about that. I didn't read too much into it at the time, but a few people have thought that he was maybe throwing Ollie under the bus a bit. What do you think about it?
I think I think some people may take it out of context, but when you do go back and listen to what he says, he is saying there's a type of mentality that we all need. We need a change to be in that mentality to go and win. I don't know if he's necessarily throwing the manager under the bus. It's looking to the stage where is he actually thinking, can we do better? And any player's going to have in their mindset, if I want to win, we need to be with the best. And it is looking likely that he doesn't have faith in the manager. And we've all seen bust ups before. We've all seen what's happened when players speak openly and freely. They've been punished. De Gea had the armband taken off him. Pogba was vice captain. He spoke about playing under Mourinho. He spoke about that a couple of games in as vice captain. He was given the armband and it was taken off him. I think it's a reflection of I don't think players are given the ability to speak freely about where they are at their respective stages. Is Pogba actually thrown under the bus? Potentially. But is it? I don't think it is. I think he's just saying that as a whole, they're not actually up to scratch and they need to do something quickly. Otherwise, they're going to fail. I think for any fan, you would look at it and think he is putting some strong indirect comments there.
Yeah, I think he said was we haven't found the problem and we need to find out what the problem is. Um, you can interpret that whatever way you want. I'm not 100% sure that he's hinting that the coaching staff are the issue, but it's not unusual for Pogba to put out cryptic messages, him and his agent, so who knows. Um, Coming up next is Atalanta. Going to be a very difficult game. The home game and the away game can easily see us being turned over away in Italy. The way we're playing, I think if we manage to get a win on Wednesday night, it'll be a very, very narrow win that we'll struggle to, like Villarreal. Liverpool coming up next. It's hard to see anything other than Liverpool winning about 4-0 at Old Trafford. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I had to turn the camera off there. It does. My laptop has a flash issue now and again where it really does flash in your eyes, and it's really a nightmare. Um, I watch Serie A on a regular basis, and when it comes to Gasperini and what he's done for Atlanta, he's even though he's not won anything, he's been a success. He's got them playing very good football in the system he plays. The back three, they press in the front, they attack teams really well. But the one thing they do is they control games as well. In the particular stages, like with Leicester, they control the midfield really well. They pass really quickly as well, which I think is going to be an exploit for us. Where if they press us too much and then we make a quick defensive transition, we could cause some problems, and we will be expected to have most of the ball in midweek. But I just look at that performance, and I'm thinking they will gladly give us the ball because they know once they get the ball back, they're just going to be on us from the width areas or even coming through the middle. They have the players to do it. Duvan Zapata, he's one in particular where he's a very powerful striker and he has got the pace behind him as well. He only needs like one or two chances, and if he gets in the right position, he's going to cause us so many problems. And I look at who's potentially going to play in our defence, and he's physical. If he gets that opportunity, he'll know who to go for and who to target, and he'll exploit it. He only needs one pass from the midfield, and I think if he just gets that, he'll cause us issues.
Yeah, I think midweek's going to be a struggle. I could easily see us losing again. If we lose against Liverpool and lose badly, do you think that could be the end for Ollie, or do you think he'll get another few weeks to turn it around?
I think if we lose to Liverpool, he's unfortunately gone. I think he's gone. I think that sort of result would be Mourinho similar.
Obviously, it would be a lot earlier in the season than when Mourinho was sacked. I think that was mid-December when Mourinho lost at Anfield and got the boot. For Ollie, it would obviously be a lot earlier. That's why I'm thinking. That's why I'm not so sure that the board would push the button. They're known to be quite patient, but the way we're playing, and if we were lose to your biggest rivals at Old Trafford and in quite a convincing manner, it's hard to see him surviving that because the pressure that he'll come under from the fans and the media will be huge, and it becomes more and more difficult for the board to defend him. I know that they put out these statements. They've been doing it again recently that they're fully behind him and they believe in the project, but there's only so many times that you can say that and ignore the truth of what's happening.
Yeah, I agree with that in terms of like, you can only save face for so long, and it gets to the point where fans will become disinterested, and we've seen it at other clubs as well where things go wrong. If you don't listen to the fans, it will come back to haunt you. And no match going fan or any fan watching realistically wants to see the worst for Man United. But if things don't improve, we could end up becoming stale. We could end up becoming a parody of ourselves, where it's literally just rinse repeat the same problems, and we just cannot seem to fix it. And it'll become the stage of what can we do to actually fix it. And I think if you are going to replace the manager, you need to actually consider when you're going to do it. If they are going to do it after Liverpool, if we do lose heavy, then they've made that choice. We still have a barren run where we can still turn things around. I don't think you're going to see a new manager before Liverpool, but I think potentially after Liverpool you might, depend on how things go, but it really does depend on what happens. If we get battered the next 2 games, then in all respect to the manager, I don't see him lasting much longer.
Yeah, because the season will still be salvageable if we change the manager after Liverpool, and the owners might also be thinking, or the board might be thinking that, if we lose on Wednesday night, once again we could be looking at a situation where we're not getting through the Champions League group. They'll be keen to avoid that situation again. So if we lose to Atalanta and lose to Liverpool, they might press the panic button. But we'll see. I think it's very, very plausible that we could lose those 2 games on Liverpool. It could be an embarrassment. Looking at the way they're playing as a team and looking at the way Salah is playing as an individual, he's irresistible at the moment, isn't he?
I've only watched them numerous times. Like when I watched them in the Champions League against Milan, which I thought they were lucky to win. His influence in that game was still effective for them, and they turn things around. They do have a set style. They do have Klopp seems to get the best out of this team when it really matters, and that's where they need to go. And I think we do need something like that to just take us on. But in regards to where we are, if I would hate to lose, I hate watching us lose, and obviously a loss comes in, but it's the manner of way we lose a game, and the way we lost against Leicester, that was painful. If we lost the same way to Atlanta and Liverpool, I don't know about you, I don't know about anybody else, but me, I would feel minuscule.
Yeah, and I don't think that any manager should survive that unless he has a lot of credit in the bank, like trophies, like a Champions League or Premier League already in the bank. Like if Klopp went on this run of form, you could see him surviving it because he's won so much already, but all he hasn't. And if you haven't got that in the bank, then you've got to say that it would be time to move on. Okay, what we normally do on this show is rate the 11 players individually. I'm sure this is going to be a fun task today after that performance. There'll be some interesting scores for sure.
Yeah.
Have it again, it'll be an easy one. I think he had another good, despite conceding 4 goals, I don't think any of them were his fault. I thought he had another really solid performance and was unlucky to be on the losing side. So what would you give him out of 10?
I think giving him less than a 6 is doing him an injustice, because I agree with you. I think overall for that game, I don't hold him responsible for any of the 4 goals. Sadly, it's went through his net, so you're going to have to go, well, he's on the losing side. But we've been in the stage before where we've lost games before with great goalkeepers, but it's not their fault that we've conceded. So if I'm going to give him an honesty, I'm going to give him a 6. I think he had a decent performance. I think if he's to get any lower than that, I think it's an injustice against him.
Yeah, the save to deny Tielemans was absolutely fantastic. I think that came as a result of Matic losing the ball in the centre of the midfield, who actually had a decent enough game yesterday, but we'll come up to him. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, what did you think of him yesterday?
I thought at stages throughout the game, I thought he was actually quite decent. The trouble is it's the same repetitive issues where he's getting exploited at the back, and it's positions where he's getting turned over and then he's forcing to defend and recover the ball, and he's not particularly doing it well at the moment. I'm going to give him a 4.
Okay, no problem. Can't disagree with that. Harry Maguire, I mean, it's probably his worst performance to date in United shirt. How would you score him then?
After the first 15 minutes, I knew we were in trouble. Just by watching his performance, he looked flat. He was trying to organise players and positions, and he was retreating from his defensive duties. Club captain as well. Like I said earlier on, like I think if you're not fully fit and you're up against a player with pace and you're not 100% fit, it's going to be a problem. Use your voice and just ask not to play for that one game. It's not going to kill your career. I'm going to mark him down as a 2. I don't think he was particularly impressive at all yesterday. As a club captain, organising defence where he's getting ripped to pieces by Tielemans, Iñárritu, and at times Madison when he had his rinse sometimes as well. Like he had that control, and then we all saw what Vardy can do. Like Vardy's the same every time. Yeah, 2 for me.
Yeah, I think he was at least partly to blame for all of the goals. I mean, every possible mistake that a defender could make in a football match, he made it yesterday. It was absolutely atrocious. Victor Lindelof, what do you think of him? I think he was perhaps a little fortunate to stay on the pitch when he clattered into Jimmy Vardy. Maguire was the only covering defender. I mean, Maguire was not going to catch Vardy in that situation. So Lindelof got a yellow, but potentially it could have been a red had Maguire not been level with the play. But I think Lindelof was pretty poor again yesterday as well.
Yeah, I think as a collective, both centre backs weren't particularly great. I can see what he was trying to do, where he was at least trying to stop Vardy, but he was already flat on the ground. He was never going to really do anything to stop him. I agree. I think he was lucky. At least, I'll give him credit. At least he got an assist from one of the goals yesterday. He did get an assist for it once again. Like his carrying of the ball and his passing of the ball was exquisite, and he has that in his locker. It's just like a few other players in his team, they get bullied too easily and they just do not show enough, and it doesn't help. I think he was marginally better than Maguire, but not by much. Just marginally, just because like Maguire's fitness and his lack of minutes at the moment where he's just not up to speed. I'm going to give Lindelof a 3. I think he was marginally better than Maguire, but not by much.
Okay, what about Luke Shaw? Do you think he's become a bit complacent? Do you think he started to believe his own hype a wee bit, or has he always been a bit of an average defender and more of an attacking fullback?
I've always liked Luke Shaw. He's a player I've always liked to watch, especially because he knows what he's doing on the pitch. He's good at defending. He's good at going forward. He's got a decent delivery of a ball, but since the Euros, he's not been his absolute best. And I honestly haven't got a clue why that's the case. You would expect after having such a good Euros, first English player to score in a European Championship final for them, you you would expect him to kick on now and prove why he's capable of being one of the best in the world. But since that final, he's been like Maguire, awful, and it's horrible, really. And yesterday, he didn't do anything for me that convinced that he should be starting at the minute. I think personally, he should be reminded that not every player is undroppable. I think based on recent performances, Telles doesn't really have much of a chance to prove why he is capable of playing in the role because of Shaw's performances last year. But Telles in his last game is actually quite good. I think at Atlanta maybe it's the right team to play against. I think personally I would give Telles a chance and I would remind Shaw that you're not undroppable. I would drop him. I'm going to give Shaw 2 as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea to put Tellez in. Obviously, he scored a brilliant goal against Villarreal. I do also think that he's a bit defensively suspect defensively himself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he does offer a lot going forward, so similar to Shaw. So I think yeah, Atalanta at home would be an opportunity to remind Shaw, that you're not undroppable. So that's a good shout. So in the Man Matic, I thought he had a good like 60 minutes where he done his defensive role very well and he was moving the ball forward. But then he must have began to tire because he started to give the ball away. He touched on it earlier where he gave the ball away for that Tielemans chance that was saved by the
Yeah.
guy. and he done that a few more times. The problem with Matic is not his ability; it's just his age has now become the issue, and he can't play every game, and he definitely won't start against Atalanta. So, how do you critique his performance yesterday?
I feel for him because he is sadly affected by the one thing that gets everybody, age. Because he is a class act on and off the field. He's always delivered. He's always put in a performance that makes you think, if only you had that extra yard of pace, if only you could play 2 or 3 games a week, you would be the absolute perfect anchor for this midfield. You'd be absolutely perfect. But circumstances ahead of him, age, no pace, but he's still got his awareness about him as well. Like he has that Carrick awareness where he can sit in his position. But like you mentioned, and I agree, is like he gave away silly chances to Leicester because he was tired now. I think for 60 minutes, I thought he was one of our best players on the field. Even though Leicester were still getting through us, it was only until we were starting getting tired that's when it really kicked in. So in all fairness, I don't have much of an issue with that, but I wish I wish he had the speed. I'm gonna give him. I'm not going to mark him too low because I think just like De Gea, it's just a matter of I think it's circumstance against him. So I'm going to give him a 5.
Okay, can't disagree. What about Paul Pogba? Like I said earlier, he's back to his lazy, arrogant self. He didn't offer anything defensively or offensively yesterday. I thought he was really, really poor.
This is the game where I thought now's a really good chance for Pogba to really show after having such a good international break. Come in, play in your preferred position, and tear this team apart. Take the ball, take control, and dominate Leicester. Show everyone why you are on your day the best central midfield player on this planet. And yesterday he didn't look anywhere near it. He looked poor. He was off it. He wasn't in control. Defensively, I know he's admitted himself in the past that he's not a he doesn't have a defensive side to his game. If he's going to play in that position, he needs to have a bit of defensive side to his game. And yesterday he was at times exposed, and that does not help when we're trying to win an important game in such a barren run that's just started. He isn't going to get all. He isn't getting all the blame because it's not right on him. But yesterday he was extremely ineffective, just like a number of players, and for that it did not help us at all. So in all fairness, I'm giving him a 4.
Okay, what about Bruno Fernandes? Normally he wouldn't be any lower than a 7 for me, but I think yesterday he was. He didn't really have much of an impact on the game.
Bruno is in that team probably my favorite of them all, like for the way he delivers and like he has like a Brian Robson type esque to him where he will get up and down and he'll put the energy in there and he'll pick a pass, but he can also score brilliant goals. But yesterday he was just not in the game at all. It did not look like he was actually effective to the point where we're going to win, and it did not help that he was just not doing what we normally do. He didn't take control of the game yesterday. He was the one being controlled, and for a player of his quality, that's not great. I agree with you. Like whenever he plays, like is never lower than a 7 because he's always at that high standard. He plays for the team. He's a quality player. But yesterday he was so ineffective. Same as Pogba. I'm gonna give him the same score, but he's lucky it's not any worse if he had made any absolute mistakes. But he didn't make any yesterday. He wasn't in the game. 4.
Another person who had a really poor afternoon was Ronaldo. Okay, you could argue that he didn't get an awful lot of service, but every time the ball did come to him, he miscontrolled it. He gave it away. There was even a cross that came in that normally he would bury the header into the bottom corner, but he could totally miss the ball, and that summed up his afternoon.
Yeah, I thought Ronaldo was quote unquote a miss yesterday. I felt like we were playing with a ghost in the team. Like he was just not effective at all. And Ronaldo's one of my all-time favorite players to watch, but yesterday he was not in it, and it went against us. I think it might come as a shock to you what I'm going to score him as, but the amount of chances he had, the times he had on the ball, we didn't control it. I'm giving him a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, it's really hard to argue with that, and it's a real shame. Even I would have expected more from him yesterday, and he was very critical of his own performance against Villarreal. So I'm sure that he would accept that he didn't play well yesterday either. Um, the thing is, when Cavani plays up top, you know that he's going to chase down defenders, fullbacks, and make life difficult for the opposition. But Ronaldo obviously doesn't offer that. So when he's not scoring goals and he's not receiving the ball very often, there's no point in him being on the pitch.
Yeah, because if he isn't getting the balls to him, he's not going to be able to be effective, and we're not getting there. And if he isn't getting that, then it's going to be a detriment to him. It's going to be a detriment to us, and it's going to put us in a major disadvantage. It's a shame because he's such a prolific goal scorer and such a fantastic player. If he doesn't get fed the ball, he's not going to do anything, and it doesn't help him as well because it's not the type of player. He isn't a Cavani type player where he's going to press teams like for a full 90 minutes. He's not going to do that, but he presses in a different way where he presses within that 12-yard box, like 12 yards, 18-yard box, and he's absolutely dangerous. But outside of that, he isn't. It's not what he does. But when he isn't getting the service and all that, he isn't going to be effective for us, and it's horrible to see really because he's such a fantastic player.
Yeah. Okay. We'll come on to a bit more positivity now, and that is Mason Greenwood. What an absolute worldie of a goal. It's probably not the last time we're going to see him score a goal like that. Um, Again, you could say we relying on individual brilliance to score goals. Under Ollie, that's been a huge criticism that's been aimed at the manager. But it was absolute joy to watch. It would have been worth the admission fee for all the fans who travelled down to the game.
I thought that was an absolute standing goal. The only one that rivaled it was the Tielemans goal, but that was in itself that was a first touch beauty into the corner which De Gea couldn't save. But in terms of Greenwood's finish, that was perfectly done by the absolute whiz kid that he is, and that sort of player that we really do enjoy watching. And it won't be long before he is the main number 9 for us. He's still getting there, but that goal was absolutely fantastic, and he is a brilliant player. And he's one that I hope we never lose because he has so much to his game that's so effective, and I'm hoping that he will continue to build on these performances. But it was amazing, that goal. I'm going to give him a 7. I think he was overall. I thought he was our best player yesterday, even though we lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't disagree. Jadon Sancho then, what do you think of him yesterday? I think he should be playing on the right, but Ollie seemed to be insistent on playing him on the left. I know he can play that position, but I don't think that's his strongest. I think if we want to get the best out of him, he needs to be playing on the right. So overall, how would you critique his performance?
I agree with you. I mean, I've seen him. I was in the German league where he's more prolific on the left hand side, but on the left hand side, but on the right, he's more of a creator. He just seems to be more comfortable on that side to get crosses into the box and be effective. I thought he had a decent game yesterday. It's just unfortunate he just couldn't get a chance to score. I don't think he was in any real position to cause any danger to Schmeichel. But gradually through games, he's becoming better than when he's becoming better and better. He's more similar to the league. It's going to take him a little bit, little while longer, but I think he is. I think he's considerably close to being that type of player that everyone was craving for. It's just he really needs to get back on that right hand side and be able to deliver. I think when we watch him play, he's the dribbling, the agility, the quick feet, the quick thought processes. You can see it like when he's about to dribble, he's so quick with his eyeing about where he's going to move. He's so quick with that, and he gets a ball through. That we haven't had that for quite some time, and we're going to do that. I don't think he had a poor game yesterday. I thought it was great that he got well over 60 minutes, and he was able to deliver. I think he's getting to the point where he really does deserve a full 90. He does deserve a full 90 if he wants to deliver. So I'm gonna I'm going to give him the same score as De Gea, to be honest. I'm going to give him a 6. I don't think he had a particularly bad game yesterday.
Yeah, I think he was unlucky to be substituted. I think if anyone should have come off in the front line, it should have been Ronaldo, but we know why
Yeah,
that was the case, given what happened after the Everton game where Fergie appeared to criticise Solskjaer for not starting Ronaldo. I don't think we'll see Ronaldo being dropped or substituted again. Um, yeah, I thought Sancho was unlucky to be taken off for Rashford. Rashford have had a brilliant impact coming on, scoring that wonderful finish. Isn't it great to see him back and firing so soon after coming back?
I think it's fantastic that he's already came back and he's already scored. And obviously behind closed doors, he scored twice against Blackburn. So I think he's building on it. I think it's fantastic for him. He's going to take himself forward, and obviously he's injury free. Finally, we'll see where he goes now. And I'm glad he's back, and I'm glad he scored. Normally for a substitute, I'll give him a 5, but the fact he had such an immediate impact, I'm going to give him a 6. The same as Sancho and De Gea, but the goal was worthy of winning any game. It's just a shame we didn't win the game yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think Lingard and McTominay were on long enough for you to give them a score. So I'll ask you about the manager then. How do you critique his performance yesterday?
I didn't see, in all honesty, I didn't see anything from the manager that said we were going to turn things around, even though we got the first goal, take the lead, and then we got the equaliser, like with the 2-2 and all that. Like, I didn't really see anything that says we were going to go and take the game and win it, because the second that we scored, the team was not organised enough that Vardy scored, and I was like, that pain of not having that control in the game. And I don't think he changed the system up in the game that would have given us a chance. I think we just stayed the same, hoping that we play well as a team and then we go and score. But we didn't particularly play well as a team yesterday. We were just in spells. We need that to change. If he cannot make that change, it's going to get to the point where someone else will have to come in and do it. And for him, I can't put all the blame on him, because it's not all on him. However, there's some things that as a manager he should be able to try and affect by changing things up, and he didn't necessarily do it. So I'm going to give him a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's not looking good going forward. We like I said earlier, it wouldn't be a surprise if we lost both games against Atalanta and Liverpool, and it would be difficult to see the manager surviving that. Unfortunately, like you said, I really would have hoped that he would have won a trophy as United manager. I don't think anyone has won a trophy as a player and as a manager at United, so it would have been a unique achievement. But that ship sailed, I think, with the Europa League last season, so it doesn't look like it's going to happen, does it?
Yeah, it's that stage where it's just not going to work out, and sadly he's out of his depth. And I feel for him, because obviously he's a United legend, but as we alluded to earlier on in the show, is like we alluded that he's rebuilt the club. At least he's put us in a strong position for whoever is to come in, that they'll take the reins and then they'll take us to the next level. I will give him the credit where he's doing that. I don't know if many people will, for his successor, will say, well, the previous manager got us in this position after such a difficult period to do. I don't think he's going to win a trophy, but I don't think he has much time left to turn things around. I think he is at the point of, when will the board actually pull the trigger? It's sad to see any manager go, but it's looking likely that he is. He's still always going to be a club legend, but as a successful Manchester United manager in terms of winning trophies, he's not going to be that sort of success. But at least he's got us in a long-term position to go on and be that success again. At least he's got us to that point.
Yeah, his legendary status as a player is not under threat for me. And if the next manager does achieve success, I will remember him as the man who built the foundations for that.
Because I think it's similar sort of esque of like Ron Atkinson. I see it all the time on Twitter and stuff, where people are comparing Sir Alex Ferguson and Solskjaer together. I'm like, don't, because it's totally different. It's totally different. I look at what Ron Atkinson did, where he won 2 FA Cups in 5 years, but he still played exciting football, but he couldn't get us over the line to win the first league title since '67 or the first European Cup, because obviously he couldn't win as a European Cup, because obviously at the time we didn't win the league, but he still had great nights with us. But he got us in that position where someone came in, took the reins, made a few changes that were important. Took us a couple of years, but then we went and absolutely dominated everything that there is to win. And I think Solskjaer, to a degree, and I'm not saying he is Ron Atkinson, but because Ron Atkinson won those 2 FA Cups, I think he is on that level of, he's got us in that position where at times he's played exciting football. He's some great games that we'll always remember, like Paris, for example, or the City wins, knocking Liverpool out of the FA Cup. We've had all that, and that's great. But he could, like Ron Atkinson, he could only take United so far. Solskjaer's the same. He could only take us so far. But the next man that comes in will credit the work, and then we'll take it to that next level. And I think that is why I think he is that's why I think he is a success, but in a different way. Similar to like Pochettino potentially for Spurs, like he's a success for what he built. And I think Solskjaer is the same. Like he's a success for us, but it's a matter of, we need someone now to say, okay, you've given us everything. I'm going to take it now, and we're going to go and do this.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Well, I wish we were doing this podcast under better circumstances, but it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Reece.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have you on again sometime, and we'll see you later.
Absolutely.